We have always had, since the day we settled here, a gentle understanding with the creatures who live beyond our borders. We do not stray into their woods. They do not come into our village. I have always pictured them in some ways as our protectors. They have allowed us to live here, nestled amongst them in this untouched place.
The Village has always been a favourite film of mine. Now, speaking about MK, speaking about programming, mind control, manipulation, misinformation, not only that, resets and narratives. The Village pops out as a film which has it all, on a societal scale as well as a mental scale and an individual scale. With MK mind control, we can look at it in terms of an individual scale inside of one's mind, or on a societal scale happening on a larger scale. The films that show both are key. Comparing this to our own history, a lost history, a forgotten history, a narrative placed over truth, just like we see in The Village. The Village, spoilers ahead by the way, is a movie set in the 19th century in Pennsylvania, about a village whose population lives in fear of creatures inhabiting the surrounding woods beyond it, referred to as those we don't speak of. And these creatures that are dressed in red and look like monsters scare the inhabitants into staying inside the grounds. Few question what is beyond the woods where they are told not to go, that is defended by the people in red. As the film proceeds, a man and woman start to question outside of the woods. She actually passes past the boundaries, and when she enters, or rather when she leaves, she discovers it's actually the 20th century. And it turns out that a population of people that had undergone extreme trauma through family members being murdered decided to buy land in the middle of nowhere, create a story and a narrative and take it back to the 19th century, a time which karma. The inhabitants, none the wiser, are brainwashed and manipulated, given misinformation into believing they are in the 19th century when not. On the scene just shown, you can see that the village is inside a national park. And in previous videos I've already highlighted the importance of park, and we know how many people go missing in these parks. The question has to be asked, what is going on inside these parks? All the stories as well of alien abduction could be related to potential encounters of MK Ultra programming brainwashing. Maybe another video for another time. Comparing this to our own world again, the village elders who created the village, created the story and the narrative, would ultimately be the controllers, like the controllers of our reality. And this again relates back to the park and things such as Westworld, that we're in a park, that we're in somewhere where a narrative has been set by people that are controlling us. In terms of a reset and a false narrative, this can be seen as the whole film of The Village. Them resetting their lives, resetting their history for a select group of people. Again, on a societal level and an individual level, the brainwashing, control and manipulation like we see in MK. When The Village was first started, the people would have had to disassociate with the real world and enter the fake world. There is one man, a crazy, a loon, that ultimately laughs at everything as he knows the truth, he knows the game that is being played, and he knows the village elders are the ones dressing up, scaring the rest of the villagers. This also relates to things such as the hunt and the hunting grounds, as when trying to pass the borders into the woods, that's when the park becomes a hunting ground, when its borders attempt to be breached. And again, all this relates back to our real world with hospitals, mental asylums. People that wake up to this would ultimately be seen as crazy. And we have to remember, in the case of this, we are the villagers. The world is the village, we're the villagers, and the old is the elite. In the case of an individual mind level, the village could be seen as the mind, the villagers, aspects of the mind, personalities, splits within that mind, the borders and the boundaries, the controls put in place not to pass, highlighted by colours such as yellow, and the monsters highlighted in red, with the old as the controllers, The outside world, the outside world, the outside of the mind. Outside we do not know much of, only stories, myth. This again relates to my other movie, The Prism, where we look at the world as a prison and the inhabitants unknowing prisoners of that prison, born into the prison essentially, also seen as a workhouse, born into the workhouse, unaware of the outside world, unaware of the truth, and pushing forward with a false narrative. And the start of that civilization, or the start of that programming, could be seen as a reset. And then the programming, manipulation, control and misinformation related to MK, related to the control of the world and the false narrative. The village have constructed a large barrier, and in the middle of the village, surrounded by the trees, are watchtowers which are constantly staffed, looking out for these monsters. Now we learn later on in the film that these monsters are actually the inhabitants of the village that are keeping the people there controlled, dressed up as monsters in masks and costume. Why did it receive the scorn it did? Why did the public not understand it? Because the public don't understand these type of films, and they're not necessarily made for the public, although they're made for disclosure. Essentially, these type of films go over the public's head as they're allegories for the life itself, allegories for the control in place, allegories for the world itself. And this is hard to see for the average person. I hope aspects of this film reveal to the people that don't see what these films are actually showing. Disclosure. Seen as fantasy, seen as story, when actually story, allegory and disclosure for truth. Pure truth, not just keys and hints of truth, stories and scripts, truth covered, and again, like we see in the world, a narrative put over that truth.